A warm welcome to you all, and thank you very much for everyone joining us for this afternoon's webinar, which is create your future and how to start your consultancy business. My name's Dan Sanders. I work with the L&D team for the IMechE, and I'm going to be moderating the webinar this afternoon. So before we kick off and I introduce you to our presenter today, a couple of points that I'd like to go through. Firstly, if anybody is having any particular IT issues, please, if you can, you're able to put some comments into the chat box, which is within your screens on your right hand side, and just make us aware. And one of our operations team will be in touch with you privately and will help you and guide you to resolve the issue if you're having difficulties. Secondly, we would like to make this quite, as an interactive kind of webinar as possible. It is live, so if you do have any Q&A, any questions, should I say, please feel free to put them in the chat box throughout today's session. We will be picking up on some of these questions where possible, and during the session, the webinar, we may be actually fielding some of them directly to the presenter today. But failing that, we will have some time for Q&A at the end of today's session. One of the things that does keep coming up on these webinars is to say, does it get the session recorded? Yes, it will. And what I will be doing shortly during the presentation in the chat box, I'll be sending you a link for where you can access the recorded webinar, this webinar and previous IMechE webinars too. So, without further ado, let me firstly introduce you to our presenter today. We have Matthew Lusk, who is we're very fortunate to have him on today. He's our chair of the institution of the IMechE's Scottish region. He's very much a director of his own engineering consultancy, the Project Engineering Management Limited. So very apt in what we're looking at today in terms of how to start your consultancy business. So what better sort of person to have on board with us. Matthew's been working closely with the IMechE's L&D team these recent years. He's been very much involved in designing, developing and customizing a number of our training and programs and courses for our clients. So we're very fortunate for him to be able to come today and be able to deliver and draw some of his experiences of what he's had in setting up sort of these consultancy-based businesses. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Matthew. But again, there'll be some, as I mentioned before, there'll be time to chat for Q&A at the end. So please feel free to put them into the chat box and we'll get around to them as we progress. Okay, I'll hand you now over to Matthew.
Thanks very much, Dan. Welcome everybody. I love the fact that there's so many people from all over the world. I can see in the chat boxes there some of the places that people have joined in from, so it's brilliant that we're able to connect with so many people all over the place. And then there's so many of you have taken the time out to be here to join us today. As Dan said, my name is Matthew Lusk, and over the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to give you some of my tips on how you can start your own business. Whether that's a consultancy, selling a product, or even a side hustle if you're still working and want to start something up. I'm going to try to give you a bit of a wide range of things that you can use yourself. Perhaps you're working in a job that you hate, one that doesn't inspire you, or one that maybe gives you that feeling of that dread, that one deep down in your stomach where you wake up in the morning and just like, oh, I really don't want to do this again today. Maybe you're worried about losing your job, or you're looking for work and can't find something you want, or anything at all for that matter. So, maybe you're just looking for more. Looking at some of the posts on the chat already, there's quite a lot of people who are starting up or thinking about starting up just before COVID struck. So it is pretty tough out there at the moment, but I'm really excited to be able to share some of the tips that I've experienced over my journey, and hopefully that helps you get to where you look to be as well. So what you're going to need for the next 45 minutes is a pen and paper, because I'm going to be firing off a whole load of tips and things, so please write them down and feel free to put questions in the chat box, as Dan mentioned. Some of them we might be able to get to as we go through the presentation, otherwise I'll get to as many as we can at the end. So what I want to start off with is talking about innovation and entrepreneurship, because this is sort of what I'm involved in and what I think is really key to it. According to our Office for National Statistics, people claiming job seekers allowance and benefits, and if we look solely due to unemployment, it rose 69% on average in the UK from March to April this year. So just in that 1 month when COVID first hit, 69% on average, and I think that ranged from about 50 to 100% people claiming it at that time. And then it's still a good chance that there's going to be more losses to come in the engineering sector, manufacturing sector, and all the other sectors. I think the job retention and furlough scheme is still going to go on till that February or March, but who knows what happens after that. So one option we've got is to be innovative and create something. That can be a service or a product, and I'm going to cover both when I keep talking about business here. I'm going to be talking about service and product. So either one, if you're involved in that, it's going to cover that. You can sell it yourself and you can become an entrepreneur. So we hear the term entrepreneur quite a lot, but what does it really take to become an entrepreneur? And I actually prefer to combine the two and think about it as what I call an innovative entrepreneur and join the two together. So have a think about, what do you think of when I say innovative entrepreneur? Who is it that you think of? Steve Jobs and Bill Gates are probably right up there. How about Elon Musk? He's the co-founder of Tesla electric cars. I actually heard last week that Musk just passed Bill to be the second richest person in the world. So I think he's quite chuffed about that, because there's a bit of rivalry there with Bill Gates and Musk. But it's not a bad effort for a company that hasn't made profit in one single year out of its 17 years that it's traded for. So coming up with that idea is often the easiest part and the fastest and the cheapest. But the real challenge really is in the execution of that idea. And it's the execution of the idea and keeping the focus on the reason that you're doing it in the first place. And the most important part for me there is the value that it provides to the customer. And the key word is value. It has to provide value for the customer. Innovation is all about turning an idea into a solution. So I said, coming up with the idea, a lot of us, engineers love to come up with ideas, but how do we get that idea into a solution? And that's sort of driven change and progress, throughout time, throughout all of history. There've been some pretty groundbreaking ideas and some really useful solutions, and some not so useful solutions either. I actually saw yesterday they were advertising a USB computer mouse that had a built-in scale on it. So where your palm sits, it's got a little mini scale, all for just the lovely price of $30. I'm not quite sure why you'd ever want a scale on a mouse for, but that's somebody's idea, made it into a solution, and we'll see if it sells. I'm not sure if it'd be on your Christmas list, but the entrepreneur has to then develop that solution into a business opportunity. So they need to be resilient and focused. So especially when we're looking at startup entrepreneurs, which is even harder in times like we are now. Resilience is one of these key words. It's very hard to be resilient and focused, particularly when we're in these sort of challenging times. And I don't think there's a person around who hasn't struggled at times over the last 6 months for some sort of motivation and the focus that, that drives them and to stay positive. It's pretty tough there for a lot of people. The business plans don't always materialize. Our ideas don't always end up becoming solutions and businesses. So it's really important that the entrepreneurs have that ability to develop and adapt that strategy and the business model throughout the journey so that they can succeed. So what does it take to become an innovative entrepreneur and to start up that journey? How do we get started in that journey? So before I give you a few of my tips, I think what I wanted to do is just share with you my journey into how I became an entrepreneur and sort of an example of what it takes to get through some of the challenges that that they throw up in the business world. So in case you haven't picked up the accent, I now live in Scotland, so I'm actually calling in at the moment from Aberdeen in Scotland, but I originally was living in Melbourne, so I'm from Melbourne. I studied mechanical engineering and industrial design when I was at university there in Melbourne, and my first full-time job was working in the edible oil refineries, so cooking oils and fats and things, and a packing plant. I also spent quite a lot of time in rolling mills and smelters just outside of Melbourne, and then later on, after a few years there, I relocated to Perth with my wife. So that was kind of our first journey into the unknown. It was into the unknown because we didn't know anybody in Perth at that time other than the two of us. But at least I had a job. I was moving to a job there. I worked in refineries, so you can see that was my drive into work along the coast of Western Australia, down the beach each day. It's quite a nice way to start your morning. Once I got a bit settled in, I used to ride my bike into work in the mornings, go for a swim at the beach. It's a pretty good lifestyle there. I definitely recommend it to anybody who's a sun bunny and is looking into that. So that was the first sort of jump, and that wasn't too bad, moving there. As I said, at least I had a job. Then the unknown became a bit more unknown. We moved to Scotland, and I didn't have a job. Neither of us had a job when we moved to Scotland first off. So I worked around the country for a while, lived in Inverness, down towards Glasgow, working in Grangemouth refineries, different places around Scotland, and eventually I settled into Aberdeen, where I've been for the last 10, 11 years or so. And I've been mainly working for drilling companies, oil drilling companies at that time. So when I was actually working in oil refineries in Melbourne, I never thought that I'd end up working in a different type of oil refineries in Scotland all these years later. And I was having a great old time, working with these drilling companies. I was flying in helicopters offshore to oil rigs. I was traveling all around the UK, over to Europe, working on a whole load of different projects, building new rigs, modifications, all sorts of things. And I was the engineering manager of a team of about 45 people. So I was actually, really progressing my career in what you would call the traditional sense, where I started off as a mechanical engineering graduate in manufacturing plants, worked my way up through reliability, through some more senior roles into project management, running sites at Grangemouth, and then engineering manager of a drilling oil company. So doing pretty well in the traditional sense of how you would expect most engineers to progress their career. Then the oil crash came in 2015, shown in the big red circle in the middle of this screen there. And it was a pretty big crash. You can see that was a map of the oil price. At one time, I think it was up to about $120 a barrel, and the price crashed down to, about $30 a barrel in the end. So it was a huge drop in the industry and when Aberdeen is predominantly an oil industry, it has quite a lot of consequences. So I was told that the team I was running there was no longer needed because there were no more projects going. So my role was made redundant, and my boss, his role was also made redundant too. He was the VP. So it was a pretty tough time for a lot of people. What do you do when you don't have any work, when there's limited jobs, when rates are slashed, the future's uncertain? Does this sound familiar? Is this where quite a lot of you are probably sitting, looking at the chat boxes and just looking at the people I talk to around the place? It's quite a familiar sight and pattern, I think, at the moment. So what I did was I decided to start up a business. Why not, huh? I started a business in a tough market. It was a really tough market, in fact. But I had the plan, and the plan is what you need to get started with. I had a plan that I'd worked on after a while of uncertainty, and I had what I needed to get underway. And for the next 5 years, it started to build really nicely. I was doing lots of consulting-based engineering projects, doing some training and teaching and various things. And then the next crash came along, and that's the next red circle you can see in there. And again, this is a map of the chart of the oil prices, but it just happens to reflect what the market is at the moment. Earlier on in the year, we're all asked to take a bit of a break for a few months. So that's the COVID crash that we're in right now. So what do you do now? First crash, I decided to start up a business, and then it crashed again 5 years later. All projects are again put on hold. Everything's halted. What do we do now? So what I did is, again, make the most of what that break is and do the same as when I first started. Reassess the business model, revise the plan, and you move on again. The cycle's constant, and there's always going to be a challenge, and it's not always going to be the COVID challenge. It's not going to be always going to be the oil price challenge. It's not going to be the market, the economic market of 2009 challenge, but there's always something. It's a constant cycle, and you have to have a plan, regroup, reassess where you are, and keep going. There were nearly 6 million what we call SMEs, which are small and medium-sized enterprises. So nearly 6 million SMEs in the UK in 2019. The Office for National Statistics says that 80% fail in the first year. And then of those, only about 40% of businesses started in 2013 were actually still trading 5 years later in 2018. So if you look at just 2020 now, which is sort of amplified, how many have closed in 2020 so far? It's going to be a huge number, and we're still going. So why would you ever want to start up a business? Why would anyone want to do this? And I think that for a lot of you, it's probably for the same reasons as what I was wanting to do. Your role might be made redundant, or you fear losing your job in the future and still might be made redundant. So you want to make some extra money. You might want to make some money that you need to live off. If you're working in a job at the moment, you might be considering a side hustle, what we call a side hustle, where you might have a full-time or a part-time job, and you're going to start up a bit of side business working at night times and weekends, just to start building that business up before you actually have to jump in and take the full plunge, or you maybe get forced into it. So, money is obviously a huge incentive to starting your own business. But it has to be more than that, more than just money. You need to have a great idea. So perhaps a lot of you, and I said I've seen a lot in the chat boxes coming through, plenty of 3D printing ones. I'm a big fan of 3D printing. I've got a little printer in my garage which I play around with. So hats off to you if you're starting a 3D printing. I think it's a perfect time to be jumping into that. Maybe you just want to be an entrepreneur, or even you want to be an innovative entrepreneur. Maybe you aspire to be something like Elon Musk does. Flexible time and flexibility with clients. You get to choose your own work to an extent. In the end, you're the one who says yes or no to any work that you're doing. You get to choose when you work on them, whether that be the daytime during the week, nighttime, weekends. If you don't have to work, if you don't like a client, then you don't have to work with them. It's completely up to you. And then the last thing there I definitely recommend is do something you love. It has to be something that you love to do, something you're passionate about. And I think this year, at the start of the year and over the last 6 months, I've learned that probably more than anything, that if you're not working in something you love, it gets harder and harder to get up. That feeling comes back of that dread. I can't imagine for the last 6 months having to get up every morning and, walk to my home office as it is, and work on something that I just don't want to work in. So, there's been a lot of challenging times the last 6 months, a lot of challenging times in the last 6 years that I've been doing this, but I don't regret it one bit. I couldn't imagine now going back to standard work. I love the whole idea of being this entrepreneur. The innovative parts may be a bit harder, but the entrepreneur is a bit easier to plan out. And so how can you start this yourself? What's the best way to get started if you want to do this yourself? One way is you can read lots of books. I think a subscription to Amazon Kindle Unlimited, it's not very expensive, and you get quite a really good range of books there. Libraries are a bit harder to get access to. If you're a member of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, then you get free membership to their online library as well. So really good resource there for some good books and things online. You can watch YouTube. You can learn just about anything from YouTube these days. I recently had my car engine disintegrate. The pistons decided to smash into the valves because my timing chain slipped, and so I rebuilt my car engine using nothing but YouTube and a pretty dodgy Haynes manual. It did take a very long time, and there was a lot of cursing and a lot of pulling my hair out, but I did get it up and running back and forwards to the TV and computer and mobile phone and things. Eventually it got running. So you can do pretty much most things from YouTube, but it's a long path. You can speak to lots of people as well. I had to speak to a few people. Some bits I got stuck. If you know people, don't underestimate the help that other people can give you. Trial and error. Lots of error, and hopefully the errors aren't too painful. Get advice from support agencies. So there's lots of government agencies, lots of free or cheaper agencies that you can get help, which give you generic information on things like business plans and finance and those sorts of things. Or you could just pay someone a lot of money to do it all for you. Just go out and find somebody, pay them a fortune, get them all to set up for you, and you've got this up and ready business, and then you're paying them to monitor it. And sometimes I think maybe that would have been better for my car, but where's the fun in that? Where's the satisfaction in that? Every time I drive my car now and start it up, I think, I did that myself. But there's some pretty nervous times as well, until you get home again and you stick it back in the garage and, yep, good, I'll leave that until next time. So you need to ask yourself, are the people and the information you're getting reliable? Are they familiar with your business and your industry? Because they're all different. Anyone can sort of give generic things, but they're all different into have they done it themselves? I find that people who have done it themselves are far better to talk to because they know your pain, they know what you're involved in. So it's not as easy as it sounds to find those people who are willing to do it. So there's a few options there as to how you can get started. So how do you make sure that you're not in that 80% that fail? How do you avoid many of those mistakes, save time and money, and avoid some of that hair pulling that myself and many others are doing? And I think that's sort of where I started off, the reason that I wrote my book. So I wrote a book earlier in the year on how to start up a business, and the reason I wrote it is because I saw so many people worried about redundancy, worried about what jobs they're going to do, and coming to me for help and advice on various things. So I wanted to help people get up and running themselves, and I knew how tough it was and what that feeling felt like as to just not knowing where to go. So what I'm now going to do is show you how you can start your business so that you can enjoy that same sort of freedom that I've enjoyed. Nothing beats that exhilaration of getting that letter of incorporation in the mail that first day when you get that letter saying, you've registered a business, the ups and quite often the downs as well of running a business too. So, you can be your own boss as well. So who wants that feeling? Who do you want to experience this feeling yourself, being in control of your own destiny? I'm an engineer, so I love a good formula. So if you want to know that new formula, or not that new formula, if you want to know that formula that I have, it's quite simple. It's just the number 4. The number 4 there is, as it says on the front of the book, 4 steps is what it takes to get you started. And I like to call those 4 steps: create, design, deliver, and grow. Now, there's obviously a little bit more involved in it to those 4 steps, but the key thing here is to keep it simple. I like to keep things really simple, even when it comes to engineering projects. Engineers love to overcomplicate things and get a really complex solution. Keep it simple, create your idea, design, take action for the business, launch the business and get feedback as you're doing it, and then refine and grow it as you go. So the first step that I like to call works is create the plan. You need to decide what you're going to do and where you're going to focus your attention. I mentioned it earlier, create a plan but keep it simple. You need to find a niche, or what we call the unique selling point, the USP. Now, you have to match the product or your service with the people or businesses who have a problem. There's always going to be a problem, and you have to find what that problem is, or what we call the pain. Your task is to find the pain and tell the customer how they're going to gain from you helping them. And it usually comes down to only a couple of key areas where you can help them with their pain. Save them money, make them money, save time, reduce risk. The gain has to outweigh the pain by 5 times, 10 times more. The more the pain outweighs the gain, the more successful you're going to be. And to put that in terms of a consultant, how does that work as a consultant? Because it's all well and good if you're selling a product. So if you look at what the Cambridge Dictionary says a consultant is, it's someone who advises people on a particular product, someone who's paid to give expert advice or training on a particular subject. So the two key phases there are expert advice and a particular subject. So what you need is a specific skill to help people solve their problem. In other words, it's finding a problem that a customer has and then find a way to solve it using your knowledge. That's what a consultant will do. And if you're selling a product, you have to do the same thing. Find something that they need. Did you know that the consulting sector in the UK keeps on growing despite the impact of COVID-19? How many industries can you say that that's true about at the moment? So Savanta did a survey earlier, part of the Management Consulting Association, and they estimate that it's increased by 7% in the past year and it's worth £11 billion just to the UK economy. So it's growing and it's getting bigger and it's worth a lot of money. And some of the areas that this report says that they're investing in are the new technologies. So things like advanced analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, cloud data analytics, all these sorts of technology areas. And that's sort of what's driving the change. And you may have heard the word digital transformation. That's becoming a bit bigger as we go. So digital transformation technologies and also project management is another one that's sort of always going to be big. So they're not isolated industries, but they're definitely two that are growing or staying constant at the minimum. The job market's changing and more people are moving into this freelance sort of consulting type work. And these days people are being managed remotely. So we can work internationally, which is opening up that opportunity to work outsourced even more. We don't have to work in offices, we can work through the virtual environment, through computers, exactly how we're doing just now. So the main part there is to break the plan down into some, again, simple basic steps. What are you going to sell? Who's going to buy it? How will you deliver it? And why do they care? That's the most important question. Why do they care? Why do they want to listen to you? Why do they want to buy from you? Customers care about themselves. You need to tell them how they're going to benefit. And don't forget yourself. Why are you doing it for yourself? Why are you starting a business? It's a lot of hard work to start a business. So here's a question for you. How many hours would you work a week to avoid working in a 40-hour-a-week salaried position? It has to be worth it, because I can guarantee you that the answer will be more than 40. So again, do something you love, something you're passionate about, but combine that with the benefit of others. Combine an industry need or an industry gap with something you love to do. Write down what you love to do, see how that's going to help others at the same time. Things like more freedom and more flexibility is what you're going to get by doing your own business. You get a variety of work. Every day is different. I love the fact that I don't know what I'm going to get every day. One day you get a phone call and you're designing staircases in train stations. Another day you're designing things that they've broken on an offshore oil rig. You've got no idea what it's going to be. You've got the potential for more opportunity, for earnings and growth opportunities, because you can scale up, you can get more people, you can do a whole lot of options and have more fun. Don't underestimate the fun factor. Do something that's fun, something you enjoy doing. The second step is where we're going to take action. You design your business and you've got to set yourself up for success by getting those foundations and those fundamentals right in the first bit. So here's one of the fun parts, is naming your business and designing a really cool logo. Something that's easy to spell, something that's easy to say. People love to use their names, so needless to say I didn't use my name for my business because most people can't say my name properly, and I don't like it when I can't read a business name or say it properly either. So don't make it too specific, because what happens if you change direction later on? If you call your fast food place Bob's Burgers, what happens if you want to sell pizza later on? You're kind of shoehorning yourself into a burger place. I always find it funny that you're driving around sometimes and you see some of these takeaway stores and they're selling fish and chips, pizza and Indian all out of the one little tiny takeaway store. Do you go there, or do you pick a specialty Indian restaurant or something that's an authentic Italian place, and think about your business in this sort of way? You could have a niche of what you're selling, because why would they want to go to you? Make sure the name doesn't already exist, so make sure that it's not registered, social media, websites, and then get your business and legal structure sorted. One tip for you is that a sole trader is not the same as a limited company, or for those of you who are in other countries, maybe you call it an incorporated company. Okay, so a sole trader is if you're doing a job and you're working for yourself. You're taking on all the risk yourself. So if you get sued, if you have an accident, if something happens, you risk losing your personal money, your house. If you have a limited or incorporated company, you're working as an employee for that company. So that company is what we call its own legal identity or legal entity, and you only then risk any money that you've put into that company. All of the money in the company then is separate to that. So you're an employee, not part of that. So the costs and responsibilities change, but there are a lot of responsibilities when you are part of a limited company or a director, especially if you own the shares to that company. So if you've got a pen and paper, if you're in the UK, a really good site for assistance on the HMRC is www.hmrc.gov.uk. So there's really good advice there on how to look at legally setting up a business, and I definitely recommend you going to that site and having a look around if you're a bit unsure about it. So just one other tip there, which I found a bit confusing when I started a business, was the difference between Companies House and HMRC. You register your business and file your accounts with Companies House, but you file your company tax return with HMRC. And all it takes is £12. It's actually really simple and really cheap to set up a business with HMRC, but it does come with a lot of responsibility, so be really careful before you pay that £12 and sign up your name on that line. You have to start lodging tax returns and get insurance and have contracts in place and all sorts of things. So the next part is, how much do you charge for your product or service? You've got an awesome product, you spend all this time thinking about how you're going to do it as a service. Do you charge it by the hour? Do you charge the same price, a higher price, or a lower price than the competition? How do you know they're even charging the right price in the first place to compare to? Maybe you want to undercut them because you're desperate for the work. You might get a lot of work initially, but it's really hard to raise your prices after that. So be careful about going in at a low price. It's a really dangerous position to start yourself in. It comes back to the value that you are providing. And then the last tip on that is, only spend what you need to spend. We all get taken by these fancy, shiny new toys that we can get when we start a business. Phones, company cars, offices, all sorts of things. Don't spend anything you don't have to. I kept my old same phone, I had to get a better computer because you have to have some better software when you're running AutoCAD and things from home. But keep to the minimums, because cash flow is really key, really important. So don't spend anything. Keep a really close eye on your cash flow. Do a forecast for that first year to make sure you're doing. Right, so you've got a business name, you've set it all up, you got your pricing, now's your time to launch. You want to launch that product, and the first impressions are really key. People are going to judge you on what they see as your website, but also what they see as you as a person. And it's based on a combination of what I call warmth and trust. You have to be authentic, and your body language is just as important as what you say. In fact, it could be more important, because I actually heard somewhere a while back that 90% of the meaning comes across through your non-verbal. So you have to show the warmth in the way you speak. If you're looking at talking to people directly, look into their eyes. One skill that we have to learn now is talking to a webcam. Don't look at your screen when you're talking. Don't look at yourself, worry about your hairdo and all that sort of thing. Look directly into the webcam camera, talk into the camera, and make it as realistic as you can to get that connection. And that helps with the other point which is competence. And especially as a consultant, competence is really important. You've connected, but you have to be credible. So use evidence to help demonstrate why they should do businesses with you. So you've told them why they need to, and the reason is because you're an expert. Do a really killer elevator speech. Have a 30-second pitch that you can say, my name's Matthew, and this is what I do. Show how good your product is and why they need it from you. Put it on social media, market yourself, and network. One of the really key things is networking. Never stop speaking to people. Work with them, alongside them, team up with them. It's the fastest way that you can actually accelerate your business, is getting into the communities you're working with, the industries you're working with. Word of mouth is free. Other people get them to do it all for you because they're going to talk about how good your service is. And then social media as well. If you're going to use social media, which you obviously are going to, set up a website and start using some of the platforms. If you've never heard of Google My Business, check it out, because Google bases a lot of their searches on Google interactions. So Google My Business, it's free to set it up, and it's really important if you want to start trading in the local areas. So get onto Google My Business as a good free starting point, even before you maybe do your website checking there. Engineers find it hard social selling. In my experience, it is pretty hard for us. We're used to putting our heads down, bums up, kind of getting the work done, come up with solutions. So we need to get used to, as an entrepreneur, selling with social media, networking with people, talking to people, and marketing ourselves better. That's one of the areas which people find hard to sort of jump across to. Every time the world changes, there's a financial market crash, there's an oil downturn, a virus comes along, follow the same process. Plan what you're going to do, refine it, and then grow. It's this cycle, continuous cycle all the time. You've got this professional image, you've got your product, you're ready to start selling. You've told them how they're going to ease their pain, so how do we sell this to people? And I think that for me, there's kind of 3 fundamental steps to the sales process that I find useful to get my head around as a non-sales person in the past. Determine the value of yourself. Okay, what is your value, and what is the value in what you're offering? You have to communicate that word, that value, the why part. Then start having conversations. It's no good just sticking ads on LinkedIn or putting ads on Google or phone books or whatever the old-fashioned way of doing it was. The hard sell isn't the way anymore. It's about social marketing, having conversations, connecting with other businesses. Forget competition, work with them, create something that is better than what they do. And then the third tip is to be authentic. Be yourself. Just like your elevator pitch there, if you're authentic, there's no other competition and no one can beat you at being you. Okay? People already do business with you. You're already successful because of what you do and how you do it. Build on that. Don't change what you do. So they're my 3 tips to sales. Determine the value, have lots of conversations, and be authentic. So you're involved in engineering, right? Well, continuous improvement is what it's all about. So this is where the refine and the grow part comes into my plan. You've got to keep on improving the business and growing your sales and the connections. Sales is continuous, delivering, selling, improving. It's all part of what I call a structured plan, or if we're talking about innovation, it's a strategic plan. A strategic plan using innovation, creation, and the passion. That's the combination that I love to see of building a business. Innovation, creation, and passion. They're the building blocks of what we're doing. So do you want to know the secret that I used when I started up, or what I continue to use? This is my secret to my business, I'm going to tell you. It's the customer. Focus on the customer. It's all about the customer. Research the market, and then I use what I use with sort of the industrial design background that I've worked in with this designing a user profile. Develop what you think your ideal customer is, what we call the end user profile. Put yourself in their shoes and walk yourself through the process. Why will they buy from you? Is it easy to buy from you? Are you easy to find? What is the process for them? Does it ease the pain they've got? So always put yourself in that customer shoes. I love to be able to think about that, take a step back, go to the website without logging in and just see what it is that they would see. Make the customer feel special and give them more than they expect. If you overachieve, that's way better than promising too much and underachieving. Look after them, give them deals and offers and more than they expect. And keeping customers is a lot more cost effective than getting new ones. You spend a lot more money to get new ones, a lot more effort. So as a consultant, the value you create and you sell is the ability to help someone move from where they are now to where they want to be, and then you can create your own value from that. So think about where they are, how are you going to help them move to where they want to be? So what about you then? Okay, so how can you learn all of this and do this all for yourself? What are you going to do now? How do we learn to read and write and walk? How did you learn to play football if you're a child, when you're a child, or maybe when you're an older child? An instrument, or maybe maths. How do sports stars become stars and successful business people know what to do? It's because they learn from others who have done it themselves. And I mentioned a whole lot of ways in a few slides earlier about how you can learn from others. But one of the key, most effective ways that I've learned myself and talking to a lot of people is to have a coach. A coach who can help them know what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and they're providing feedback and guidance on why they should do it and keep them on track. All from that past experience because they've done it themselves. So here's your chance to fast track your own success. Okay, so take out that pen and write down these dates. They're on the website, which down the bottom there can give you as well, the link there. Cancel whatever else you've got, and this is how you're going to get up and take control. We've got 2 training plans which we've put together, and they're both live online. So it's going to save you time and money straight away by being live and virtual. Together, what we're going to do is cover the 4 steps that I showed you today, and it's going to be over 4 weekly group sessions of 90 minutes, and you'll have actions each week to complete to help you build that business program, and you'll also get one-on-one coaching sessions with me. And if you sign up for that first course, I'm also throwing in a free book copy of that book, Start Your Business in 4 Steps. And for those of you who are listening who are already up and running, and you also want to improve your sales, don't worry, we've got you covered too. I spoke about the term innovative entrepreneur. Well, there's a strategic innovation process that helps you sell at a higher price and do less work. So we've put together a 5-week program for that one with some extra coaching sessions. And the 5 weeks focus on building a strategic innovation framework, conducting what I call market segmentation and research. So you're going to break up that market to really focus in on where you need to be marketing to. And then that end user profile and the persona. How do we put ourselves in the user's shoes? And then there's a term which you haven't heard of. If you haven't heard of it before, it's called customer value proposition. What is the value for the customer, and how do you develop your product to that, specify your product? And then the last one, which people have a lot of trouble with, is defining your pricing. What's the lifetime value that you're going to give, and how does that work over the lifetime? So if you want more information, there's a website link to it just there. And then there's a couple of other links that you can go to as well for some more free information. So if there's two things that I want you to have taken from today's webinar, okay, so these two things are my two key messages for yourself. The first one is why. Why is the most important word that you need to think about. Why should you do it in the first place? And why should they buy it? If you can't answer those two questions, you're going to struggle with the rest. Then the second one is the journey is only beginning. If you're anything like me, your brain's always thinking about different things, different solutions, different ways you can improve and add more value. And I can tell you it's an endless cycle of that continuous improvement. Even when things go on well, your head seems to buzz more and more and more. So it is a constant journey and a constant cycle there. For people who are looking for funding options as well, the IMechE have an additional resource there called the Stevenson Fund. So if you write that down, the Stevenson Fund with a PH, Stevenson. And they're not open at the moment, but I think they'll be opening soon, hopefully in 2021, about how you can get funding for innovation type of ideas. So it's a really good resource there. There's also the webinar hub on the website for this webinar and a load of other useful sessions to view and go back and watch recordings. But for now, on to my favourite part, which is the question time. So, right, Dan, hit me with them. What have we got?
Lovely. Well, I mean, firstly, just to say thank you very much, Matthew. I thought that was fantastic, very insightful. And actually, you gave away some very positive hints and tips there, and even some of your secrets there, which was really good. We're having so much positive feedback as well, Matthew, on the group chats as well. So really great to see. And just to highlight probably what Matthew's just said there. You know, he's given you sort of a more of an insight into setting up the business. You obviously want to take this further, and please obviously do get in touch with the IMechE training team. I've sent some links on the chat box to where you can sign up to these programs for the future. One or two questions that have come through. You know, some people get a bit nervous around, you know, the salary aspect and how to finance your business without getting into kind of debt. How do you provide sort of reassurances for people making that step, Matthew, would you say?
I think one of the key things which I think people underestimate is what we call cash flow forecast. And you need to make sure that you have enough money to survive as two areas. One would be as the business, and one as you personally. So I suppose it depends on whether you have no job to start with or you're deciding to leave a job to start up a business. But if you're starting up the business, my advice is to put together a cash flow forecast as a minimum for the first full year, not just for the first month, for the full year. Lay out every expense that you expect to have for that 12 months. And then based on the research that you're doing, what do you reasonably expect that you would get as money back in that 12 months? So you need to determine how long can you survive, again, as a business and as a person, for no income, reduced income, or what you expect as income. I was actually talking to somebody in the coaching session the other day, and they'd been a limited company for some time, but working just, you know, through another company, almost as a contractor, and they were starting it up as a standalone business instead. And I said, right, it's going to take some time to get a client in. So yeah, we know it's going to take a while to get that client in. I said, right, how long can the business last if you get no money in from a client? And they're like, oh, probably about 3 months. I said, okay, good. And if that money doesn't comes in that 3 months, you obviously need to take a wage from it or shares from your business. how long can you personally last without taking any money out of that business? And they said, oh, a month. Could probably last a month without getting any money out. And I said, right, well, if you're going to take 3 months minimum to get any money from a business, from customers, what happens in a month's time when you no longer have money? You're then going to have to borrow money. So I think the key thing there is put together it doesn't have to be really detailed, but how much is it going to take to get cash flow positive or just to survive off? So that cash flow forecast is the key thing. Lost you, Dan. I think you might.
Sorry, I was on mute. Apologies. Yeah, no, just to say, actually, your fantastic comments coming through again, Matthew. Just what a great presentation! Yeah. Really learnt some good information there and some good points. A couple of people want things around your experience within consultancy. How experienced do you need to be before you sort of go down this road?
I think it's not to do with experience. It's to do with what your skill is and what you're offering as the gain to the consumer. So, you know, how many people you can see 18, 19-year-olds are starting up businesses, and you know, people starting up businesses with just a phone and a laptop in their bedrooms, and they're starting up businesses that way. Now, I can tell you that they've got very little experience compared to some of the people I'm seeing even just here on the chats. So what you need to do is define what your value is to that other person or that business. If you have a skill that they need, then you're selling that skill as a value. So it's not to do with experience, it's to do with you're confident in being competent enough to actually sell that service. If you go back to the definition of a consultant, it's about selling a skill or selling an expertise. You know, if you're a painter, you're saying that I am the best painter there is to paint a house. You need to hire me. Same as a consultant. If you want to improve your business processes, this is how you do it. If you need calculations done on structural monorails, I'm the person for you because I can do that for you. So defining that value, defining that why statement is the main part.
Okay, thank you. And so anybody got any more questions, please obviously feel free to put them into the chat. One of the questions here, it's gone. Someone was asking about tips on using the traditional way of phone calls, reaching out to new customers.
Yep.
How have you managed that? Is that something that, and did you have a plan in place or something set up? I mean,
the short answer is I hate phoning up people that I don't know. I find I'm an engineer and I'm not a marketing person by background. So to make that jump from an engineering managerial type of role into the sales and marketing is quite a trick for some people. But again, put yourself in the shoes of the person you're phoning up. If I phone somebody up, I feel uncomfortable ringing that person up saying, hello, can I speak to the managing director of this business? I've got this awesome product and I think you're going to love it. Can I take 10 minutes of your time to talk about it? And how many phone calls do these people get? How busy are they? I think that there's definitely a place for cold calling. But I think if you're not comfortable doing it, it makes it harder to do. So get out there and practice having a go at doing it, and you'll learn pretty quickly what sort of works and what doesn't. That's probably the best way to do it. But I think these days, as I mentioned before, what we call social selling is becoming more effective, and it's about connecting with people, giving away free things, offering advice, getting on forums, showing yourself on LinkedIn, making videos of yourself, and connecting with people as that competence. Then when you phone them up, they already have some idea of who you are or what you are. So I find it, the last sort of year or two, it's made it much easier because I've made the effort to actually start connecting more and social side of things more. Now when I do that cold call, it's much easier to reach out because you've got that experience there as well.
Okay. Maybe take one or two more questions then. Someone's asking about the importance of having an actual office, the physical presence of an office itself for your business. Yep. How important is that, especially when starting out?
Okay, so an office is very expensive. I was looking at office. I don't have an office myself. I work from home because there's no value in me having an office even after 6 years. An office, I think, when I last looked, it was something like £20,000 a year to have an office. Now you can get smaller ones. You can get shared offices and Regis and all of these hot desking and things. But it's an expense that you'll be spending money on. Do you need to do it? And it's going to also depend on your home situation as well. Do you have a space in your house where you can separate your business life from your home life? It's pretty tough if you set up a laptop on your couch and you're working from your couch every day. If that's the case, then possibly an office is useful. Or as I said, you can get a hot desk, which are cheaper, or you can get shared offices as well, but then you don't have the privacy when you're making phone calls. So if you're going to have people coming to your business as part of your business, then having it at your home doesn't usually work that well because sometimes it's not best to have clients coming to your house. So my tip would be, if you can get away with it, especially initially, work from your home or a shared environment first, unless you're having visits or deliveries, or especially, a lot of places won't actually let you build things in your garage with fumes and those sorts of things. So you need to check your house legal pack to see whether you're allowed to, but spend only what you need to spend.
Okay, we'll just take one more question. That is interesting myself actually here, Matthew, as well. How long did it take before you got your first customer? And were they actually come from a previous employer? Or
that's a good question. The first customers are the hardest unless you go in really cheap, and then everyone wants to use you, and then you get stuck selling really cheap stuff. So I don't recommend you do it that way. I set up my business, when was it? May 2015, and it was probably about 3 months until I ended up getting something to start with. And I ended up getting a few. One of them was a previous employer doing projects because they knew what I could do. And then another one was from word of mouth from somebody else recommending me to someone I actually spent a couple of weeks over in Oslo on a project. So initially it was definitely word of mouth that is what got the work. And then once you build up a bit of a reputation, and because at that point you didn't have a great website and you're not on social anything and whatever, so people don't know who you are. So until you can build up that presence, that's why I say networking is one of the key areas. Reach out to friends, family, past employers, colleagues, anyone you can, and tell them that you've got a business idea, tell them you've got this service, and don't go begging for work. Don't say that you need work or you have no money. Tell them they need to get on board or they're going to miss out kind of pitch. So yeah, it can take a while depending on how you do it.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, the questions keep coming in. Oh,
sorry. One other quick thing. I just noticed there's quite a few questions about sole traders and limited companies as well. Mm-hmm. So my advice on that one is have a look at the hmrc.gov website for a bit of information. But the main difference is that if you're a sole trader, you have no protection against suing, I guess if you want to call it suing, or money protection. So it's a lot easier to set up as a sole trader or as a self-employed person, but you're leaving yourself open to a lot more the legal issues. Whereas if you are an employee of a business, a limited company, now you can be a sole director of that business. You don't have to have employees. If you're set up in a limited company, you can own 100% of the shares, but it means you're actually an employee of a company, so you have different protection levels, and make sure the company has insurance, not yourself as much. So there's different legal ramifications of it, but a sole trader is easier to set up, and most small businesses, I guess, are. But if you're an engineering consultant or something like that, the risk of public liability insurance and all those things is more important. So definitely check them out.
Okay, well, look, the questions keep flooding in, but I think they get quite more and more specific, and so I think
Okay.
I think for them to answer those kind of questions, they need to start. I've sent the links again to the courses to get more of an enhanced sort of view on setting up your business, which Matthew can be able to deliver in his courses that he's running next year. So. Yeah, thanks, Matthew. The dates are up there on the screen for you. But okay, well, look, thank you very much for all attending today's webinar. I thought that was very interesting. Really great to get a kind of a soundbite from yourself there, Matthew, on how you set this up. And so thank you very much. And we look forward to people being able to join onto the sessions early next year for the future.
Thanks, Dan, and thank you everybody for taking the time out of your day to listen in. And good luck with your own business ideas.